This is Rise, where truth is uncovered and black stories rise from silence to strength. Real voices, bold truth, unshakable legacy. Welcome to Rise. What if I told you that a single piece of plastic hitting the floor could cost a bank $5 billion? I'm talking about an ID card. Just a simple government-issued ID that took exactly 3 seconds to fall from a teller's hand to the cold marble floor. 3 seconds that would obliterate one of the most lucrative partnerships in banking history. Have you ever walked into a place where your very presence felt unwelcome? Where you could sense the judgment before you even opened your mouth? That uncomfortable shift in the air when you realize you don't fit their mental image of who belongs there? Has this ever happened to you? You walk into a store, a restaurant, an office building, dressed in your finest clothes, carrying yourself with confidence, only to feel those eyes scanning you up and down. Those silent questions. Do you really belong here? Can you actually afford this? Are you sure you're in the right place? If you've ever felt that sting of being prejudged by your appearance, hit that like button right now, because what I'm about to share will shake you to your core. This is the story of Kendra Lawson, a black CEO who built a business empire worth billions. A woman who spent months negotiating the deal of a lifetime. A $5 billion partnership that would change everything. She walked into that bank on what should have been a routine Tuesday morning, wearing a tailored charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary. The morning light filtered through towering glass windows as the city hummed with life outside. Inside Regal Financial's downtown branch, polished marble floors reflected the soft glow of elegant lighting. Classical music played quietly in the background. Everything about this place screamed prestige, success, respectability. But here's the thing about discrimination. It doesn't care about your net worth. It doesn't care about your education, your achievements, or the zeros in your bank account. It sees skin color first and makes assumptions that can cost everyone involved more than they could ever imagine. Because what happened next wasn't just about one woman's humiliation. It wasn't just about a teller's moment of disrespect. This was about the deadly price institutions pay when they allow prejudice to poison their culture. See, when that ID hit the floor, it didn't just wound Kendra's dignity. It triggered a chain reaction that would expose the toxic underbelly of corporate America and prove that sometimes the most powerful response to disrespect isn't anger, it's silence. But what happened next will change how you think about standing up for yourself forever. This is the story of how one woman's quiet strength brought a financial giant to its knees. Meet Kendra Lawson, the kind of woman who commands attention the moment she enters a room, not because she demands it, but because she's earned it. At 42, she's the CEO of Lawson Enterprises, a tech consulting firm that transforms how Fortune 500 companies operate. Her company doesn't just provide solutions, it revolutionizes entire industries. This morning started like any other for Kendra. Up at 5:30 a.m., she began with her meditation routine, 20 minutes of centering herself before facing a world that constantly questioned her authority. By 6:15, she was reviewing market reports over her first cup of Ethiopian coffee, the same blend she'd been drinking since her Harvard Business School days. The charcoal suit hanging in her walk-in closet wasn't just clothing, it was armor. Tailored to perfection, it represented the 15-hour days, the skeptical board meetings where she was the only black face, and the countless times she'd proven that brilliance doesn't come in one shade. Every thread woven with purpose, every line designed to communicate one message: I belong here. But today wasn't about proving herself to anyone. Today was about celebration. After 18 months of negotiations that would have crushed lesser minds, Kendra had secured the impossible, a $5 billion partnership with Meridian Global Holdings. $5 billion. The number still gave her chills. The deal had taken her through boardrooms in New York, London, and Tokyo. She'd sat across from executives who initially dismissed her, only to watch their expressions shift as she dissected their business models with surgical precision. She'd turned skeptics into allies, doubters into believers. Lawson Enterprises had grown from a two-person startup in her garage to a powerhouse employing over 3,000 people across 12 countries. The company's annual revenue hit $800 million last year, but this new partnership would catapult them into an entirely different stratosphere. Industry magazines were already calling it the deal of the decade. Her leather briefcase, a gift from her mentor who'd passed away 3 years ago, contained the final documentation for a routine deposit that would officially seal their partnership. Just paperwork, really. The hard work was done. Today was supposed to be a victory lap. The drive downtown took her past the neighborhood where she'd grown up, where her mother still lived in the same two-bedroom house. Kendra had offered countless times to buy her something bigger, better, but her mother always refused. "This house raised a CEO," she'd say with that knowing smile. "It's perfect just the way it is." Traffic moved steadily as morning commuters filled the streets. The radio played soft jazz, while Kendra mentally rehearsed her afternoon presentation to the board. They'd want every detail of how she'd negotiated terms that other firms could only dream of achieving. Her phone buzzed with congratulatory messages from colleagues who understood the magnitude of what she'd accomplished. The industry respected Kendra Lawson. Competitors studied her strategies. Business schools used her case studies. She pulled into the bank's parking garage with the quiet confidence of someone who'd conquered every obstacle life had thrown her way. The partnership documents felt weightless in her briefcase, such small papers for such massive implications. But success couldn't prepare her for what was about to happen. Kendra stepped through the bank's revolving doors and felt the cool blast of air conditioning wash over her. The marble floors gleamed under recessed lighting, and the soft hum of professional conversations filled the space. This was routine: deposit the documents, shake a few hands, maybe grab lunch with her legal team afterward. At the teller counter stood Bianca Morrison, 24 years old with blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her white uniform was pressed to perfection, name tag positioned exactly 2 inches from her left shoulder per bank policy. She'd been working at Regal Financial for 8 months, long enough to recognize the difference between regular customers and those who clearly didn't belong. Kendra approached with her signature quiet confidence, briefcase in one hand, documents folder in the other. "Good morning," she said, her voice warm and professional. "I need to make a deposit for Lawson Enterprises." Bianca's eyes barely lifted from her computer screen. She continued typing, fingers clicking against the keyboard with deliberate precision. 5 seconds passed. 10. 15. "Good morning," Kendra repeated, slightly louder this time. Still nothing. Bianca's gaze remained fixed on her monitor, as if Kendra were invisible. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the teller's head turned. Not her eyes, just her head, tilting slightly in Kendra's direction with all the enthusiasm of someone being forced to acknowledge a particularly annoying interruption. Kendra placed her folder on the marble counter, her government-issued ID clearly visible through the transparent plastic sleeve. "I have the documentation right here," she said, maintaining her professional demeanor despite the growing knot in her stomach. Bianca's hand moved toward the folder with theatrical reluctance. She lifted the ID from its protective sleeve, holding it between 2 fingers like it was contaminated. For a split second, their eyes met across the counter, Kendra's filled with expectation, Bianca's with something far colder. What happened next took exactly 2.3 seconds, but felt like a lifetime. Bianca's fingers loosened. Not accidentally. Not because the card was slippery. The release was deliberate, calculated, performed with the casual cruelty of someone who knew exactly what message they were sending. Clatter. The ID hit the marble floor with a sound that cut through every conversation in that bank. The hard plastic against cold stone created a sharp, echoing crack that seemed to reverberate off the walls, the ceiling, the very souls of everyone present. Time stopped. Kendra watched her identification card, the same card that had gotten her through Harvard, that had opened boardroom doors, that represented her authority and legitimacy, slide across the polished floor like discarded trash. The sound kept echoing. Clatter, clatter, clatter. Every head in the bank turned. Mrs. Henderson, depositing her Social Security check, looked up from her transaction. The businessman at the loan desk stopped mid-sentence. Two college students opening their first joint account froze, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Drop a comment if this makes your blood boil, because what you're witnessing isn't just disrespect. It's the systematic dehumanization that successful Black professionals face every single day. Kendra's heart hammered against her ribcage. Her hands trembled, not with fear, but with rage so pure it took every ounce of her self-control not to let it consume her. This wasn't her first encounter with workplace racism, but somehow, this felt different, more personal, more devastating. She thought about her mother, who'd cleaned offices at night to pay for Kendra's college textbooks. About her younger brother, who'd given up his own dreams to help support her MBA program. About every Black executive who'd been forced to work twice as hard for half the recognition. The silence in that bank was deafening. You could hear the air conditioning cycling, the distant sound of traffic outside, the barely audible classical music playing through hidden speakers. But what you couldn't hear was a single word of apology from Bianca Morrison. Instead, the teller turned back to her computer screen with the same detached indifference she'd shown from the beginning, as if dropping a customer's ID was just another Tuesday morning task. As if Kendra's dignity was worth less than the effort it would take to bend down and retrieve it. Marissa Chun, the bank's head receptionist, watched the scene unfold from her station near the entrance. She'd worked in customer service for 12 years and had never seen anything so blatantly disrespectful. Yet when Kendra's eyes met hers, searching for some sign of solidarity or support, Marissa quickly looked away. Better not to get involved. Better to pretend she hadn't seen anything. The other customers shifted uncomfortably. Some studied their phones with sudden fascination. Others found urgent business in their wallets. Everyone became expertly skilled at looking everywhere except at the successful Black woman now bending down to retrieve her own identification from the floor. Each movement was deliberate as Kendra knelt to pick up her card. Her hand touched the cold marble, and for a moment, she was 8 years old again, watching her father get pulled over for the third time that month for driving while Black. She was 16, being followed through department stores by suspicious security guards. She was 25, being asked if she was sure she was in the right meeting by a white colleague half her age. This was it. This was the moment that would change everything. Kendra's knees touched the cold marble as she reached for her ID. Every muscle in her body was taut with controlled fury, but her movements remained graceful, measured. She wasn't going to give anyone in this bank the satisfaction of seeing her lose composure. Not today. Not ever. Her fingers closed around the plastic card, and she rose slowly, deliberately. When she straightened to her full height, her eyes locked directly onto Bianca's. No words were exchanged, but the message was crystal clear. I see exactly who you are. Bianca quickly looked away, suddenly finding her computer screen fascinating again. Her cheeks flushed pink, whether from embarrassment or defiance. Kendra couldn't tell. Didn't care to find out. That's when Marcus Bell finally decided to make his appearance. The bank manager emerged from his glass-walled office with the unhurried pace of a man who clearly hadn't witnessed what just transpired. His navy suit was expensive but ill-fitting, his smile the practiced kind that never reached his eyes. At 53, Marcus had perfected the art of damage control without actually taking responsibility. "Ms. Lawson," he said, extending his hand with forced warmth. "I apologize if there was any misunderstanding with our staff this morning. We have strict protocols for all transactions, and I assure you this matter will be reviewed thoroughly." Kendra didn't take his hand. She studied his face instead, searching for any sign of genuine concern. Found none. "Mr. Bell." Her voice was steady, professional, but underneath ran a current of steel. "There was no misunderstanding. What occurred here was a deliberate act of disrespect that reflects poorly on your institution and everything it claims to represent." Marcus's smile faltered. "I'm sure if we could just. I expected at least the basic courtesy that should be extended to any customer, regardless of their appearance." Kendra's words cut through his fumbling attempt at an excuse. "Instead, I was treated with the kind of disdain that has no place in professional banking." The manager glanced nervously at Bianca, who was now typing with aggressive intensity, pretending she couldn't hear every word. Other customers had stopped pretending not to watch. The tension in that marble-floored lobby was thick enough to cut. "Ms. Lawson, please, if you could just give us another moment." "I've given you enough moments, Mr. Bell." Kendra placed her ID back in the folder with finality. "This conversation is over." She turned and walked toward the exit with her head high, briefcase in hand, dignity intact despite everything they tried to strip from her. This is where most people would have walked away. But Kendra isn't most people. Hours later, as the sun began its descent toward the downtown skyline, Kendra sat in her corner office 30 floors above the city. Golden light streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across her mahogany desk. The documents for the $5 billion partnership were spread before her like battle plans, contracts, addendums, signature pages that represented months of her life. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from board members who'd already heard whispers about the morning's incident. "The board stands behind you 100%. Whatever you decide." Robert Shun, Chairman, "This is exactly the kind of institutional bias we've been fighting against. Time to take a stand." Dr. Patricia Williams, Board Member, "Your dignity is worth more than any partnership. We support whatever action you choose." James Morrison, CFO. Each message reinforced what she already knew. This wasn't just about one woman's humiliation. This was about every black professional who'd ever been made to feel like an imposter in spaces they'd earned the right to occupy. The city lights were beginning to twinkle across the urban landscape below, each one representing lives, dreams, businesses that thrived in this concrete jungle. Somewhere down there, Bianca Morrison was probably finishing her shift, completely unaware that her casual cruelty had just jeopardized her employer's most lucrative partnership. Kendra opened her laptop and began typing. Not an angry email or a threatening legal document. Instead, she crafted a carefully worded message to Meridian Global Holdings, her new partners who'd spent 18 months learning to respect her vision, her intellect, her leadership. The message was simple. "Due to recent developments regarding institutional practices at our designated financial partner, Lawson Enterprises will be reconsidering all aspects of our current banking relationship. Further discussions will be necessary before we can proceed." She didn't mention the dropped ID. Didn't need to. The business world would understand the subtext perfectly. As darkness settled over the city, Kendra made a decision that would cost Regal Financial more than they could possibly comprehend. Sometimes the most powerful response to disrespect isn't shouting. It's the quiet withdrawal of everything that made you valuable to them in the first place. 48 hours later, Kendra Lawson returned to Regal Financial. But this time, she wasn't alone. Walking beside her were three of the most formidable legal minds in corporate America: Sarah Martinez, senior partner at Goldman & Associates; David Chun, constitutional law specialist; and Rebecca Williams, who'd successfully litigated more discrimination cases than any attorney in the state. Behind them followed two members of Lawson Enterprises' board of directors, people whose combined net worth exceeded most small countries' GDP. The same revolving doors that had welcomed a solo businesswoman 2 days ago now admitted a force that could reshape Regal Financial's entire future. Marcus Bell greeted them in the lobby, his earlier confidence replaced by nervous energy. "Ms. Lawson, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. We've prepared our largest conference room upstairs." The executive conference room on the 15th floor was all sharp angles and cold surfaces. Glass walls offered a panoramic view of the city, while a massive black table dominated the center. Leather chairs surrounded it like sentinels, and the air conditioning hummed with the efficiency of a morgue. Seated at the far end were Regal Financial's top executives: CEO Jonathan Pierce, COO Amanda Foster, and Chief Legal Counsel Thomas Brady. Their expressions ranged from curious to concerned to outright worried. Kendra took her seat at the opposite head of the table, her legal team flanking her on either side. She placed a single folder on the polished surface, thin, unremarkable, but containing documents that could destroy this bank's reputation overnight. "Good morning," she began, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding boardrooms. "I'm here not merely as a dissatisfied customer, but as the CEO of a company whose business relationship with this institution has been fundamentally compromised." Jonathan Pierce shifted uncomfortably. "Ms. Lawson, we deeply regret any inconvenience you may have experienced, and we're prepared to discuss appropriate compensation." "Compensation?" Kendra's eyebrows rose slightly. "Mr. Pierce, you seem to misunderstand the nature of this meeting. This isn't about financial settlements. This is about systematic failures that go far beyond one employee's poor judgment." She opened her folder and withdrew a single photograph, a still frame from the bank's security footage showing Bianca deliberately dropping the ID card. "When a person of my standing is treated with such blatant disrespect in your establishment, it sends a message to every black professional who walks through those doors. It tells them their success means nothing. Their achievements are worthless. Their dignity is expendable." Amanda Foster leaned forward. "Ms. Lawson, we've already initiated disciplinary action against the employee involved, have you?" Kendra's voice sharpened. "Because according to my information, Ms. Morrison is still employed here, still serving customers, still representing your institution's values. Which tells me everything I need to know about what those values actually are." She stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the city below. "My company generates $800 million annually. We employ over 3,000 people. We've just finalized a $5 billion partnership that would have made this bank our primary financial institution." The room went dead silent. They finally understood. Kendra turned back to face the executives, her expression unreadable. "I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to inform you that Lawson Enterprises will be terminating all current and future business relationships with Regal Financial, effective immediately." Thomas Brady found his voice first. "Ms. Lawson, surely we can find a way to resolve this amicably. The financial implications of losing your business, the financial implications should have been considered before your employee threw my identification on the floor like garbage." Kendra's words cut through his plea with surgical precision. "You had 48 hours to demonstrate that my dignity mattered to this institution. Instead, you offered excuses and empty apologies." Jonathan Pierce's face had gone pale. "Are you saying this incident is the reason you're reconsidering our partnership?" Kendra returned to her seat, her movements deliberate and controlled. "I'm saying that an institution that tolerates such behavior cannot expect to maintain relationships built on mutual respect." The choice was simple: address the systematic bias that plagues your customer service, or lose a multi-billion-dollar partnership. She closed her folder with finality. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. Share this if you believe respect should be non-negotiable, because what you're witnessing is what happens when dignity has a price tag that institutions can't afford to ignore. 3 weeks after the confrontation, Kendra sat in a recording studio bathed in warm, professional lighting. Behind her hung a backdrop featuring images of diverse professionals, community leaders, and young entrepreneurs, faces that represented hope, determination, and untapped potential. She looked directly into the camera, her voice steady but passionate. Every time one of us is dismissed, every time our worth is questioned, society loses a piece of its potential. I stand not only for myself, but for every individual who has been forced to fight for recognition simply because of the color of their skin. This wasn't just another corporate message. This was the launch of Elevate Dignity, an initiative that would transform her personal humiliation into a movement for systemic change. Within hours of posting the video, social media exploded. Hashtag Elevate Dignity started trending on Twitter. LinkedIn posts sharing similar experiences flooded timelines. Instagram stories featured professionals of all backgrounds expressing solidarity. The hashtag Stand for Respect gained momentum as people shared their own encounters with workplace discrimination. At C_Martinez, this happened to me at a client meeting last month. Thank you at Kendra Lawson for speaking up. Hashtag Elevate Dignity at dur_Thompson_MD. 20 years practicing medicine, and I still get asked if I'm the nurse. Change starts with conversations like this. Hashtag Stand for Respect at startup founder_K. Had VCs question if I was the real founder of my own company. We need more leaders like at Kendra Lawson. Hashtag Elevate Dignity. The response was overwhelming. Business leaders, celebrities, and ordinary professionals began sharing their stories. The movement grew from a personal stand to a national conversation about respect in the workplace. But Kendra didn't stop at social media activism. Within a month, Elevate Dignity had evolved into a comprehensive program offering cultural sensitivity workshops for corporations. Major companies began reaching out, wanting to ensure their employees understood the impact of unconscious bias. The program's first client? Ironically, it wasn't Regal Financial. While other institutions embraced change, Regal Financial initially resisted. Internal memos leaked showing executives dismissing the incident as blown out of proportion. They believed the controversy would fade, that business would return to normal. They were wrong. News outlets picked up the story. Industry publications ran features on corporate accountability. The bank stock price dropped 12% in 2 weeks. Major clients started asking uncomfortable questions about Regal's company culture. Finally, under mounting pressure from shareholders and regulatory bodies, Regal Financial was forced to act. They implemented mandatory cultural sensitivity training across all branches. An independent oversight committee was established to monitor customer service practices. Bianca Morrison? She was quietly let go, though no official reason was given. The training sessions at Regal Financial were uncomfortable but necessary. Employees watched video testimonials from customers who'd experienced discrimination. They learned about implicit bias, cultural competency, and the real cost of disrespect, both human and financial. Meanwhile, Kendra's initiative continued growing. Elevate Dignity partnered with business schools to incorporate cultural sensitivity into MBA curricula. They created mentorship programs connecting young professionals with established leaders who understood the unique challenges faced by underrepresented communities. The transformation was remarkable. What began as one woman's refusal to accept disrespect had become a catalyst for industry-wide change. Kendra had turned her pain into power, her humiliation into hope for millions of others. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of her approach was what she didn't do. No angry press conferences, no social media rants, no public shaming campaigns. Instead, she channeled her energy into building something constructive, something lasting. Corporate America took notice. Harvard Business Review featured her strategy as a case study in effective leadership during crisis. Fortune magazine named her one of the most influential leaders driving change. The message was clear. When you elevate one person's dignity, you elevate everyone's. When you stand up for respect, you create space for others to do the same. Kendra's quiet strength had accomplished what years of protests and legislation couldn't. It made respect profitable and discrimination expensive. Companies realized that inclusive cultures weren't just morally right, they were financially smart. From victim to victor, from pain to purpose, this was leadership in its purest form. And just like that, with no press conference, no dramatic announcement, no media circus, the biggest financial partnership of the decade simply ceased to exist. The termination letter was delivered on a Tuesday morning at 9:47 a.m. 2 pages. Legal letterhead. Corporate language that masked the earthquake about to shake the entire banking industry. Effective immediately, Lawson Enterprises withdraws from all negotiated partnerships with Regal Financial Group. This decision is final and non-negotiable. Jonathan Pierce read the letter 3 times before the reality hit him. $5 billion. Gone. Not transferred to a competitor. Not delayed pending further negotiations. Simply gone. The Lawson Enterprises board had voted unanimously. Not one member questioned Kendra's decision. Not one suggested compromise. They understood what Pierce and his executives had failed to grasp. Some principles aren't for Meridian Global Holdings, the third-party beneficiary of the original partnership, issued their own statement. We support Ms. Lawson's position and will be reviewing our relationships with all financial institutions to ensure they align with our values of dignity and inclusion. The ripple effect was immediate and devastating. Regal Financial's quarterly earnings report, released just weeks later, showed the impact in stark numbers. Revenue projections slashed by 60%. Stock prices in freefall. 3 major corporate clients requesting contract reviews. The board of directors calling emergency meetings to discuss reputation management strategies. Other banks watched Regal's collapse with growing alarm. Goldman Sachs quietly updated their customer service protocols. Chase Bank launched a company-wide diversity initiative. Wells Fargo brought in external consultants to audit their branch operations. The message was spreading through corporate America like wildfire. Disrespect has consequences, and those consequences have price tags attached. Meanwhile, Kendra's decision created opportunities she'd never anticipated. Competitor banks began reaching out, eager to secure Lawson Enterprises as a client. The same partnership that Regal Financial had lost was being courted by institutions that understood the value of treating all customers with dignity. First National Bank offered terms 15% better than Regal's original proposal. Metropolitan Trust threw in additional services worth $2 million annually. Community Savings, a minority-owned institution, presented a partnership model that aligned perfectly with Kendra's values. The choice was clear. Kendra selected Community Savings, not because they offered the most money, but because they offered something more valuable, authentic respect for her leadership and vision. Industry publications scrambled to analyze what they dubbed the Lawson effect, the phenomenon of businesses facing severe financial consequences for discriminatory practices. Harvard Business School added a case study to their curriculum. The Wall Street Journal ran a front-page feature titled, "When Dignity Becomes Currency." Kendra's legacy was being rewritten in real time. No longer just a successful CEO, she'd become the executive who proved that walking away from disrespect could be more powerful than any negotiation tactic. Subscribe if you believe dignity is worth more than money, because what you've witnessed proves that sometimes the most expensive business decision is the one that compromises your values. So what can we learn from Kendra Lawson's story? First lesson, your dignity is non-negotiable. No amount of money, no business deal, no career opportunity is worth compromising your self-respect. Kendra could have accepted Marcus Bell's hollow apologies, taken whatever compensation they offered, and moved on. Instead, she drew a line in the sand and refused to cross it. Second lesson, sometimes the most powerful response is quiet strength. Kendra didn't scream. She didn't cause a scene. She didn't blast the bank on social media or call press conferences. Her power came from restraint, from choosing her battles wisely, and from understanding that dignity speaks louder than anger ever could. Third lesson, one person's courage can change entire systems. Because Kendra refused to accept disrespect, banks across America updated their policies. Training programs were implemented. Oversight committees were formed. Her individual stand created institutional change that will protect countless others. Fourth lesson, success means nothing without respect. Kendra had everything: wealth, influence, power. But none of that mattered when a bank teller treated her like she was invisible. True success isn't measured by your net worth. It's measured by how you're treated in the spaces your achievements should have earned you the right to occupy. Now here's my question for you. What would you have done in Kendra's shoes? Would you have bent down to pick up that ID and pretended nothing happened? Would you have accepted the manager's weak apology and moved on with your day? Or would you have found the courage to walk away from $5 billion because your dignity was worth more? Have you ever had to choose between money and dignity? Maybe it was staying in a job where your boss constantly undermined you. Maybe it was accepting a business partnership with people who didn't respect your contributions. Maybe it was keeping quiet when you should have spoken up. Drop a comment and share your story. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Here's the truth. Respect isn't something you can buy, negotiate, or earn through achievement. It's something you demand through your actions, your choices, and your willingness to walk away when you're not receiving it. Kendra Lawson showed us that sometimes the most expensive lesson an institution can learn is that every customer's dignity has value. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is remove your presence and your money from spaces that don't honor your worth. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button right now. We've got more incredible stories of resilience, courage, and triumph coming your way. Share this video if you know someone who needs to hear Kendra's message. Because every time we stand up for dignity, we make it easier for the next person to do the same.